Traditionally, the role of the leader, the role of the CEO, right, was to manage on high, pull the levers, and make sure everything worked the right way, right? And if you were going to start a new innovative enterprise, take some risk with something, you would take that piece and you'd put it off on the side where it would be safe, where it could be protected from the bureaucracy, right? And where if anything went wrong, it wouldn't infect the core operations of the company, right? Which were so very important to be able to make your numbers and be able to succeed, okay? When Steve Jobs got to Apple, he turned that on its head. He took the most innovative, risky parts of the enterprise and he put them at the core of the organization, right? And he hired someone else, Tim Cook, to make sure that the trains would run on time, right? Now, we'll learn over time whether having Tim Cook be in charge of all of Apple, how that will play out, right? But Mark Parker does this in his own way, too. He is constantly walking the halls, walking around at Nike and trying to inject new ideas and trying to inject that creativity, that innovation into the core of what Nike is doing. So a few years ago, he was wandering around and he saw a young designer who had a prototype of a shoe on his desk, and Mark walked by and said, "What's that?" The guy said, "Well, a colleague and I are trying to figure out how to replicate the idea of barefoot running, like what it would be like to, wear shoes that felt like you were running barefoot." Mark loved this idea, thought this was great. He put a lot of money in it, he put a lot of attention behind it, and Free has become a billion-dollar business for Nike, right? All right, third one is called edit and amplify. This is actually a phrase from Mark Parker, but it's something that Steve would have also said. This is a graphic of Apple's products over time. I'm going to zoom in a little more so it's a little easier for you to see. At the top of that, that's the early Apple years when Steve created this iconic company. Apple didn't have that many products, right? And then in that middle area where the number of products proliferate, that was when Steve wasn't there, and when Apple sort of lost its way. And then Steve comes back, the number of products become fewer and fewer and fewer as we move to the bottom, and Apple becomes the most valuable company in the world, right? In the environment that we're in, where there is so much change and there is so much chaos that is coming at us, it's critical for us to focus on what are the things that we can do really well, right? That is our competitive advantage, and not try to respond to everything that everyone is doing, because if we do that, we will get distracted. We will lose, right? It's another part of being a fast company. All right, I have one more sequence for you. And this is something I'm borrowing from a professor at Stanford named Carol Dweck, and it's about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, right? Now, those with a fixed mindset believe that once we become adults, we are basically who we are, right? We are formed. The adage about this is you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? But this idea is that when someone who has a fixed mindset comes upon something new, they think, well, that's interesting, but it may not really be for me, I'm not really going to try that. It's going to be embarrassing. There are a couple of brothers who wrote a column for Fast Company about this several years ago, Chip and Dan Heath. Chip's a professor at Stanford, and Dan is a consultant in North Carolina. And Dan told me the story about himself taking salsa lessons. Anybody here a salsa dancer? I'm not a salsa dancer, but for some reason Dan wanted to learn salsa dancing, so he took these classes, and I guess it wasn't very good. He wasn't very good at it. He was a little embarrassed, and he dropped it. Okay, and he uses this as an example of himself being something of a fixed mindset. Now, someone with a growth mindset looks at things a little differently. When they come upon new information, they believe that they can develop new areas of mastery. They recognize that when they go into a new area, they will not be good at it. They will be bad at it. It will be embarrassing, right? But that embarrassment, that fear doesn't stop them. And because with the belief that they can learn it, that belief, along with a lot of hard work, allows them to build new areas of mastery.